Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I do videos on creepy and disturbing things. The background may be fresh and new, but the intro is always the same. Today we are starting a new iceberg series, and I hope y'all like it enough that we can continue with it. Today, after a lot of deliberation over all the amazing suggestions you guys gave me, I am gonna go with the strange/weird deaths iceberg. It doesn't mean I'm not going to do more icebergs in the future, so if yours that you suggested was not chosen, I actually got so many great ideas, so I'm going to switch it up, but I will be doing more of these in the future, most likely. This iceberg was made by username Walrus64 on the Iceberg Charts website, so all credit goes to them for actually making it and putting the tiers together. I, of course, am going through and researching every single one on the chart myself and putting a little more thorough explanation on it. If you guys do like this video and you like this idea for an iceberg chart, I'm just starting with tier 1 today just to kind of feel out how you guys like it, because if you don't seem to engage a lot with it or you're not super interested in this topic, that's totally fine, but I don't want to put in hours and hours of effort into it if you guys aren't going to like it. So please let me know in the comments below what you think and engage with the video to let me know as well. It also just helps my channel. So remember how icebergs work. If you're not familiar with icebergs, they are a chart, and the upper tiers, the highest stuff above the water, is what we think of as common or well-known topics. As you go down the iceberg and go deeper and deeper through the tiers, you get to the more less known topics in that topic. And with that, as they become lesser known, they usually get darker and creepier. This first tier, therefore, is more well known and also has a lot of really old deaths in it from like Greek ancient times. Just so you know, they are interesting in themselves, but just so you know, there's a lot more modern ones in the past few decades and the 20th century as we go further down, just FYI. It's also important to note that these are strange or weird deaths. These are not mysterious deaths. So we're not doing unsolved cases and that kind of stuff. We're doing literally weird and very bizarre ways that people have died. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. I will talk about them in a little bit, and let's get started. Adolf Frederick is first on our list. Adolf was the king of Sweden from 1751 until he died in 1771. Adolf was celebrating a Christian holiday called Shrove Tuesday. If you are not Christian or unfamiliar with Christian customs such as this, Shrove Tuesday is the day before Ash Wednesday, and Ash Wednesday usually commemorates the start of Lent. And so on Shrove Tuesday, it's traditional for people to eat a ton of pleasurable food as they prepare for giving something up for Lent. I think traditionally it was also specifically pancakes, but I think it doesn't matter. I think it's just a lot of food. So on Tuesday, February 12th, 1771, Adolf Frederick had a meal of lobster, caviar, kippers, sauerkraut, boiled meats, and turnips. He washed it all down with champagne, and then he had semlas for dessert. This is a picture of a semla here for most of us that don't know. He loved semlas. He ate 14 of them in one sitting after this meal. And it wasn't just the little pastry, it was semlas that were served in warm milk that was seasoned with cinnamon and raisins, which again, remember hundreds of years ago, and the stuff that they ate back then is not the same stuff we'd eat today. He ate so much though that it is commonly accepted that he literally ate himself to death. According to Wikipedia, this explanation by modern writers is actually considered propaganda, and I don't think a lot of modern historians actually believe that that is how he died, but most sources do say that this is how he passed away, or at least by the digestive problems caused from eating way too much. However, Wikipedia's source was a book in a different language, a book that I didn't have, so I don't really have a way of fact checking them. However, it was so long ago that who really knows. Aeschylus is next. He was from the ancient Greece time, like BC, really old times, but he was a playwright, mostly known for writing tragedies. He died because he was just walking along someday and an eagle, or perhaps a vulture, we're not really sure, just dropped a tortoise on his head. and it hit him square in the head with such force that he died. This is a very common thing for large birds like this. If they're going to eat a tortoise, they're going to drop it from a high distance onto a rock or something very hard to break the tortoise open so that they can eat it. And it's likely that the bird thought that his head was a rock. Another rumor about his death, as if his death is not weird enough, there is a rumor that an oracle had actually told him before that he should stay outdoors and not go inside of his home because he was doomed to die by a house collapsing on him or something heavy falling on his head. And so ironically, he was staying outdoors to try and avoid this fate, but instead an eagle just carried out the fate instead. Brandon Lee is next. Brandon Lee, if you don't know, is the son of famous Bruce Lee. He followed in his father's footsteps very closely. He became a martial artist and he became an actor as well. He was in a few different things, but his acting career started to look really promising when he landed the lead role in the 1994 film called The Crow. While shooting a scene, his co-star, Michael Massey, was supposed to shoot his character, but when he did with the prop gun that was supposed to be loaded with blanks, Brandon was accidentally shot with an improperly made dummy round. This story is actually really complicated. I read several sources about exactly what happened, and unless you know guns really well, which I am no gun expert by any means, it's really hard to explain exactly what happened. But essentially, one of the dummy rounds that they were using in a previous scene got stuck accidentally in the barrel of the gun. They were not aware of this. They did not catch the mistake before starting the next scene, and so they thought this prop gun was only filled with blanks. But it wasn't, and this dummy round hit Brandon Lee with almost the same force as a regular bullet. Brandon Lee actually fell backwards instead of forwards like he was directed to do, and nobody noticed at first. He fell backwards because he was hit. The director called cut, and everybody thought that he was messing around at first, like weren't understanding why he wasn't getting back up before they had realized what was happening. Sadly, he had to undergo 6 hours of surgery, but unfortunately he didn't make it. Chrysippus is next. Chrysippus was a Greek Stoic philosopher, and this is our first case in this series of death by laughter. I had no idea. I thought this was just an urban legend, but death by laughter is actually, though rare, totally a real thing and completely possible. Apparently, if you have a fit of laughter that's so strong, you can choke or end up with a heart attack because you get yourself so worked up. So it said, this one is actually kind of funny. It said that he started laughing so hard when he saw a donkey eating his figs, and then he made a joke about it, something along the lines of, now give the donkey a pure wine to wash down the figs. And apparently he laughed so hard at his own joke that he actually died right there. We're gonna take a real quick break in this video to thank today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves to learn and wants to explore their creativity and learn new skills. You can invest in yourself and your personal growth with Skillshare. If you're interested in making a career pivot or up-leveling your skills in your current role, Skillshare is a great resource for both freelancers and entrepreneurs to help you learn new skills to support that growing side hustle or launch into a totally new career with classes like finding fulfillment, using pivots to power your creative career, and start your creative career with Sonia Razula. I just finished the course called Screenwriting, Learn to Write Plot-Driven Films by analyzing Arrival. And while I'm not an aspiring screenwriter per se, I am very interested in film. As you guys know, I watch a ton of horror movies. That's almost all the movies that I watch. And so taking a class like this was very valuable for me to help me understand movies that I watch better and to take a deeper look at them. The first 1,000 people to use my link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Link will be at the top of the description right below this video. Remember, Skillshare is always ad-free, so you can stay in the zone while exploring new skills. Thank you again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring a portion of today's video, and let's get back to it. Next is Elisa Lam, who we have talked about many a times on this channel, but it is on the Iceberg, so we're going to talk about it. It is interesting that the creator of the Iceberg, I was reading their comments to other people that were making suggestions for additions, and at first the creator didn't want to add her because they considered it a mysterious death, but said after thinking about it for a while, they did finally add Elisa. And I do think that it counts because regardless of the mystery behind it, it is still a very, very strange way to go. Most of you know the story, but as a refresher, she was last seen at the Cecile Hotel. And the most infamous part of this story is that there is footage of her the night she was going to pass away, of her in the elevator acting very, very erratically as if she was running from someone. She was later found deceased in the water tank on top of the building, and she was naked. It is very, very likely that everything that happened to her can be explained through a very unfortunate manic episode due to her bipolar disorder. Very strange nonetheless. There's a reason why her death is so famous. Franz Ferdinand is next, and I thought Franz Ferdinand was just a band, but apparently it was a person too, and Franz Ferdinand was actually an archduke. It is a very, very long story for this one, so I will have to summarize for the sake of time. Basically, people wanted to assassinate him. 7 assassins were assigned to the job, and they were armed with guns, bombs, and cyanide pills, so whichever way was going to be most convenient for them was the way they were supposed to do it. The Archduke and his wife, Sophie, were driving through town in a motorcade at the time. The first one tried to throw a bomb at his car and get the job done that way, but the bomb bounced off of his rolled up roof, it was like a convertible, and landed underneath the car behind him. 2 of the other assassins were apparently there and they saw this, but they lost their nerve, so they didn't end up attempting this. The bomb, of course, did actually go off and injured a bunch of people, and in spite of that, the Archduke kept going. He and his wife continued to their mission to City Hall, and once they were done there, they wanted to visit the wounded soldiers in the hospital. However, the first 3 cars in their motorcade took a wrong turn, and they ended up right at one of the other assassins that were hanging out in town, and he pulled out a pistol and killed both the Archduke and, according to him, as an accident, but still his wife Sophie as well. Interestingly, this is the event that really spiraled us all into World War I. George Herbert was an aristocrat from the late 18 to early 1900s. His home, fun fact, would go on to be the filming location in Downton Abbey. George accidentally cut over a mosquito bite while shaving. It became infected, and very unfortunately, he got blood poisoning from it, and then that progressed to pneumonia. So that's terrifying. He was also the financial backer of the Tutankhamun. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, so I'm sorry. I'll put it on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. The tomb. And it's thought by many that opening a tomb will instantly curse you. And he was present at the time of the opening of the tomb and was also the financial backer for it. So many believe that he was cursed to die in this very strange way because of that. Grigori Rasputin. Grigori Rasputin was a mystic and a self-proclaimed holy man. He was friends with the last emperor of Russia and therefore had some influence on Imperial Russia. Again, political history is super boring to me, and there's a reason I don't talk about it on my channel that much, so I'm not going to get into all the details of everybody's relationships and how this happened and all that. But just know that because of his influence over Russia at the time, there were people that wanted him killed. Again, gonna say this wrong, but a man named Felix Yusupov wrote what happened to Grigori in his memoirs, at least according to him. So according to his memoirs, Prince Felix Yusupov lured Grigori to his home into his basement and offered him tea and cakes that were laced with cyanide. Apparently, Grigori ate the tea and cakes after initially rejecting them, but he did eat them and drink the tea, and it didn't affect him, even though he had been poisoned with cyanide. He then asked for some wine, and he was given wine that was also poisoned. He drank 3 glasses of it, and still it did not affect him. And so Felix went upstairs. His co-conspirators were up there ready to help him if he needed anything, and he got a revolver. He went back down to the basement, and he shot Grigori in the chest. Thinking he was dead, the conspirators then went to Rasputin's home together, one of them dressed up in some of his clothes in order to make it appear like he got home safely. But when they went back to Felix's home, Felix went back down to ensure that Grigori was still dead, but instead Grigori suddenly pops up after having been shot in the chest and attacks Felix. They fled from the basement and ended up upstairs in the courtyard, where one of his co-conspirators did come out and shot Rasputin until he actually did pass away. They disposed of his body in the river. Henry I of England. Henry I was the King of England from 1100 to 1135 when he died. King Henry was a huge fan of lampreys. He ate them in abundance. If you don't know what those are, they are a type of little fatty fish. They look like this. His doctor had advised him to stop eating them so much because he was eating so many that his doctor feared it was bad for his health. But he ended up getting sick after one day of eating so many lampreys and ended up dying later that night. However, it's very likely that he just got food poisoning from eating so many lampreys, and it's more likely that that actually killed him rather than eating too much. Philip Hughes is next. Philip was an Australian cricket player, and he was only 25 years old when he died. He was in the middle of a cricket match when he was struck in the neck with a ball. Philip actually, he was wearing a helmet and proper protective gear, but the ball managed to hit the unprotected spot on his neck. He was rushed to the hospital. He underwent surgery. He was even put into an induced coma, but the injury caused a subarachnoid hemorrhage, and unfortunately, he did not survive. Pythagoras. Pythagoras is another ancient Greek philosopher. Remember that these ones are so long ago that they're really, really hard to verify for sure, so take them all with a grain of salt. But Pythagoras, as a philosopher, believed that when a human died, their soul would be transferred into an animal, and therefore he was a lifelong vegetarian because of this. He also had this belief that beans, yes, the plant, beans, and humans came from the same source. He believed this because he buried some beans one day, and after a few days, when they had grown for a few days, they looked kind of like human fetuses. And so in spite of the fact that he never tried this with humans to see what they looked like after being buried for a few days, he therefore believed that beans and humans were one and the same. So in the commune that he led, he didn't allow any of his followers to eat beans. There was a son of a nobleman named Chilon who really wanted to join Pythagoras's commune. However, Pythagoras didn't necessarily say no, but he told him he had to do the proper training and all the other stuff that was needed in order to join. And this included 5 years of complete silence before you were even considered. Chilon did not want to do this, and so he was rejected. Chilon didn't like this answer, and so back in the day, as one did, he formed a mob to go after Pythagoras and his followers. So they went to the commune and started to destroy it, setting all the buildings on fire. Pythagoras' followers were actually so loyal to him that they formed a human bridge for him over the building that he was in order for him to step over them to get out. And they succeeded. He did escape, but there was a problem. Pythagoras, the only direction he could go was to a bean field, and he came across the bean field. His only way to escape would have been to trample through this bean field, and Pythagoras did not believe in that. He felt like eating beans was cannibalism and trampling beans was killing other people. So he had no choice but to just stop before the field and just let the mob come at him, and they proceeded to stab him to death. It's also thought by many that he actually died by suicide after he had made it across the bridge of his followers, but he actually felt so guilty for killing his followers, or that his followers died for him, that he ended up dying from suicide instead. This is a Chinese one, so again, I'm really, really sorry. I'm definitely gonna say this wrong. I'll do my best. This one is Qin Shi Huang, and he was the founder of the Qin dynasty and the first emperor of unified China. So again, this one was way long ago, like BC times. And because of that, it's impossible to actually prove this. But it is alleged that he died from mercury poisoning. And while we can't verify it for sure, it's very likely that this is how he died. It was actually not so uncommon back then, especially in, ancient Chinese remedies, for higher class people to get these elixirs made for them, and the elixirs would be formed by alchemists and even physicians. The elixirs often contained poisonous metals though, and sometimes even arsenic. It was believed back then that ingesting these elixirs formed by the alchemists would provide immortality to those who drank them. It's said that this emperor was consuming mercury pills made by his alchemist or his physician in order to gain immortality, but of course he died. Sophocles. Sophocles was another playwright from ancient times. Interestingly, he actually lived to be 90 or 91, which is actually pretty impressive for that long ago. There are several different rumors of how he died. One such rumor says that he died from straining because he was reciting part of his play, the play Antigone, and he was reciting some of it, but he wasn't pausing to take a breath, and he recited this big long part of it, and he would not take a breath, and therefore died that way. Others say he choked to death on grapes in a festival in Athens. And then my favorite rumor is that he died from happiness. It's rumored that he literally died from pure joy upon learning that one of his plays won at the City Dionysia Festival. Love that for him. Okay, this one, of course, is going to be very sad to all of us, but being a strange death and very well known, of course, we have to mention Steve Irwin, or as most of us know him as, the Crocodile Hunter. He was a super famous Australian TV personality, known best for his television series, The Crocodile Hunter. But he was also an environmentalist, a zookeeper, and of course, a wildlife expert. He was killed tragically when a short-tailed stingray impaled him through the chest while filming a documentary called Ocean's Deadliest at the Great Barrier Reef. The stingray itself was actually 6.5 feet long and very, very, very sadly got Steve right in the heart. The whole thing was caught on video, of course, because he had cameramen on him all the time at this time. However, thankfully, the footage of this has never been released. And as far as I know, nobody except for, the very few people that were involved have ever seen it. According to Steve Irwin's widow, his wife, she says that the tape has actually been completely destroyed. One of the cameramen say that they kind of implied that it wasn't destroyed, however, it's never going to be released, which I think is good. After his death, upwards of 10 stingrays were found with their tails cut off on the beach, mutilated, and it was thought by many that this was people taking revenge on stingrays because of Steve Irwin's death. However, we don't know if that's really the case. People hunting will often remove the tail just so that the stingray can obviously, not sting them, and so that is a common practice, so it's not necessarily revenge, and that would be a really dumb way to take revenge because that's the last thing Steve Irwin would have wanted. He, I'm sure, completely understood the risks of what he was doing. Tennessee Williams is the last one for this tier. You may have heard the name. He was another playwright. He was a playwright but also a screenwriter, and for those of you that don't know, he wrote the plays like The Glass Menagerie, A Streetcar Named Desire is probably the most known one, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. He died at the age of 71 in 1983. He was found in his hotel room in New York, and the chief medical examiner says initially that he died from inhaling a plastic cap, like a cap that you would find on a nasal spray device. But it was later discovered that he was actually using the cap to inhale barbiturates, and that is a type of drug, and the cap was indeed lodged into his mouth, but the reason it was because he was inhaling this drug, and it is actually think, proven that he died from this drug overdose and not the cap itself. All right, everyone, that is going to be it for tier 1. Like I said, I know this video is a little shorter, but it won't be in the future if we continue on with this series. Like I said, I kind of want to test the waters and see what you guys think of this topic and if you would like me to continue. So if I do, the future episodes will definitely be longer because I will just do more of the tiers within them. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a like just to help the channel, and I will see you all next week. Thank you to all my patrons, especially top tiers Colin Holmes, Deck of Cards, Michelle Valdovinos, Tom L, JJ, Quadzi Eli, Little Kittle Cat, Whimsicott Fan, Delta Wolf 776, Mitchell Meyer, Mike, Alice Paul, Dark-Sided Otter, Brittany Phillips, JB Funk, Willow Winchester, Amanda Klein, Bambi, and Nianu Keanu.